Umpires have always been and always will be the subject of a lot of criticism. A fan's favorite team will lose, and the first thing that they will blame is the umpire, whether he deserves it or not. Umpiring is a job where you don't get recognized much for doing a good job. The umpires that get a lot of attention are the ones that make bad calls. Then their name gets thrown around on the internet after people complain about it. If they make a bad call, a player or manager might get up in their face and yell at them, but if they make a good call, nobody's going to come up to them and congratulate them. Obviously, that might be a bit much, but it does get my point across about how umpires aren't really recognized when they perform well. You will hear people often saying, "Wow, the umps are bad this year," or "Man, the umpires this year are worse than ever." But that is not the case, and really, the opposite is true. According to Fangraphs, umpire accuracy around the league has been on the rise since 2008, when the pitch tracking era began. If you think the umps are bad now, just imagine what it was like in 2008, when they were 10% worse than they were in 2022. Specifically, they've gotten a lot better on calling pitches in the shadow of the strike zone, or the borderline calls. The bad calls are the ones that all the people see, and that leads to the robo ump argument. We have the technology, why not implement an automatic ball and strike system where the umpire will get some kind of notification through a device and then make the call? Well, there are many reasons why MLB isn't going to make that huge jump anytime soon, but that's for another time. If Major League Baseball employed the top umpires from around the country, the robo-ump argument would have a lot less push, but the problem is, they don't. Not all umpires are created equally. Most umpires are good, some are really great, and others are just plain bad. Now, thanks to umpire scorecards, we know who the bad umpires are. Here are the 10 worst umpires in 2023 based on their accuracy, or how often they call balls balls and strikes strikes. There have been 89 total umpires to call at least 8 games behind the plate in 2023 so far, and these are the worst 10. Looking at these names, you can see a few familiar ones. Ron Kulpa, C.B. Buckner, Hunter Wendelstedt, and Las Diaz are pretty well known amongst baseball fans simply because they are bad. You might recall this moment from earlier in the season when Aaron Boone got ejected, then mimicked Las Diaz's strikeout call after he missed a few calls. A few is an understatement. According to umpire scorecards, Diaz had an accuracy of 89% with an expected accuracy of 94%. The expected accuracy can change based on how many borderline calls there are. For example, a pitch right down the middle has an expected accuracy of 100, while one right on the edge of the zone is a lot lower, since the umpires are more likely to miss those. Anyway, Las put up a 66% accuracy on strikes, which is incredibly low, as you might imagine. This scorecard went viral on Twitter, garnering over 2 million views, and that is the reason everyone knows Las Diaz's name. Others on this list had similar games, and of course, they also got some attention. But none of these guys are as legendary as Angel Hernandez is. Angel Hernandez has been around for a while, but that's not his most defining trait. To put it simply, his most defining trait is that he is bad. That's pretty much it. He has the lowest accuracy amongst umpires that have called at least 8 games behind the plate, and also has the worst accuracy above expected. Like I said before, they get more credit for calling a borderline call correctly than calling a pitch in the dirt a ball when it comes to accuracy above expected. This list is pretty similar to the accuracy list, as one might expect, but there are a few names on here that you might recognize since they get a lot of attention for being this bad. But there are also some good umpires and some even elite, and I think it's time to talk about some of the good that comes from behind the plate. Do you know the term 50-40-90? It's often used in the NBA to describe a player who shot 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and 90% from the free throw line. It doesn't happen often, but a player who scores that efficiently is obviously going to help your team. I've come up with a similar stat for umpires, the 95, 1.5, 94 club. Doesn't quite roll off the tongue as nicely, but it'll have to do. 95 being the first number, meaning accuracy. The umpire called 95% of balls and strikes correctly. This is a high bar to reach, as only 6 umpires through the last 2 seasons that have called at least 10 games have at least 95% accuracy. This is out of a group of 99 umpires, so these guys are about the top 5% in terms of accuracy. As we discussed before, accuracy isn't the best metric when evaluating umpires. It's pretty simple though, and I would compare it to batting average. Yeah, if you're hitting over 300, you're probably a good hitter, but it doesn't tell the whole story. The middle number, 1.5, is for accuracy above expected. How much better was the umpire than the average expected performance? Here's the list in the past 2 seasons of umpires who hit that mark. Another short list of talented umpires. You see a few repeats on here, but also some new names. These guys are the best of the best when it comes to accuracy, and there's not much argument to that. They are performing better than the expected average umpire would do, and it's not really close. 1.5% is a lot, especially when the worst umpire has a 91.7 accuracy, being Angel Hernandez, and the best umpire has a 95.5% accuracy. The range of those is pretty small at 3.8, so every tenth of a percent is a big deal. Now to the final number, 94. 94 represents the average consistency of an umpire. How consistent was the umpire in making calls? Was he consistently calling borderline pitches on the inside for strikes, or balls away he was giving the pitcher the outside corner, or was he just calling a straight zone for 9 innings? This list is a little longer, but here are the names of the umpires who managed to record at least a 94 average consistency in the past 2 seasons. Consistency matters less than accuracy most of the time, but it's still an important part of being a good umpire. Now that we know these 3 statistics, let's look at umpires who are on all 3 lists and are members of the 95, 1.5, 94 club throughout the past 2 seasons. There are just 3: Pat Hoberg, Quinn Walcott, and Brock Ballou. Jeremy Rehack just missed out as he had a 93.9% average consistency, which did not meet the threshold, but he did in the other 2 categories, so he deserves to be mentioned up here. Let's start with Hoberg. He debuted in the majors in 2014 and he quickly became one of the best umpires in the league. He was promoted to a full-time position in 2017, and in 2018, Boston University released a study that showed he was among the top 10 umpires in the league at calling balls and strikes. He would continue to dominate the umpiring scene up until the 2022 postseason, where he made history. In Game 2 of the 2022 World Series between the Houston Astros and Philadelphia Phillies, Pat Hoberg called a perfect game. He called all 129 pitches taken correctly as balls or strikes. This is unheard of. Since 2015, when StatCast was implemented in all 30 MLB stadiums, Pat Hoberg is the only umpire to call a perfect game. Think about that. There are over 2,430 games in each regular season in Major League Baseball, that amount of games over 8 seasons, and it isn't even counting all the postseason games. Hoberg is the only one to ever call a perfect game, and this was one of the few cases where performing well as an umpire helped get his name out there. The scorecard of the perfect game that was posted by Umpire Scorecards went viral on Twitter, as it should. The game will most likely stand as the best game behind the plate of all time for a while, considering how incredibly rare it is and the fact that it was done in the World Series. So even if an umpire calls a perfect game in 2024 or sometime in the near future, unless it was games 3 through 7 in the World Series, it's not going to get better than Pat Hoberg's 2022 World Series Game 2 performance. Quinn Walcott debuted in the 2013 season, but unlike Hoberg, he started slow. From 2015 to 2018, he was just 66th percentile in accuracy, 77th in accuracy above expected, and 63rd in consistency. Since 2021, though, he's been in the 95th percentile in both accuracy and accuracy above expected. He's also been very consistent in the 94th percentile. It took him a while to get going, but now in 2023, he's established himself as one of the best in the business. While he doesn't have a perfect game like Pat Hoberg does, he did have a 99.2% accuracy game, which is as close as you can get to a perfect game without getting it. He was 124 for 125 on called pitches, which, if you didn't know, is pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good. To put it simply, Brock Ballou is the Julio Rodriguez of umpires. He's in just his 2nd year of umpiring in the major leagues and isn't even a full-time umpire yet, but he's put up numbers, just like Julio has in his first 2 seasons in the league. Let me just read you off some numbers from Ballou so far. 95% accuracy, which is in the 99th percentile. 1.65% above expected accuracy, that's also in the 99th percentile. Lastly, he has a consistency of 94%, which is in the 98th percentile. These are quite the numbers from a guy who is only 31 years old, not even a full-time umpire yet, and is just in his 2nd season in the majors. You can see why I'm drawing comparisons to the Julio Rodriguez. Major League Baseball needs to lock him up for a long time, get that contract signed. That's obviously not how this works, but he needs to be a full-time umpire as soon as possible, and he needs to be around the league for a long time. One thing that these 3 umpires have in common is their age. They are all young. In fact, they are all under 40 years old. Hoberg is 37, Walcott is also 37, and Ballou is 31 years old. Some of the worst umpires in the league this year are on the older side. C.B. Buckner is 61 years old, Las Diaz is 60 years old, and Angel Hernandez is 62 years old. Now, there's nothing wrong with being old, but it's clear that the older the umpire is, the more likely he will make bad calls. Fangraphs even went into this, and they found as umpires get older, there is significant evidence that their performance drops. This is the case for multiple reasons. 1, younger umpires have better eyes. It kind of sounds stupid, but they do. When you get older, your body starts to not work as well, and the eyes are part of the body, so they're only going to get worse. And it helps to have good eyes to see 100-mile-per-hour fastballs coming in right at your face. Number 2, newer umpires are more in tune with a modern game. Older umpires could be still old school and, do stuff like award veteran pitchers or give them a few borderline calls even though it was probably a ball. The older umpires also probably believe in makeup calls. Makeup calls are when they kind of know that they messed up. Maybe there was a pitch that was obviously a strike, but they called it a ball, and the next pitch maybe a few inches off the plate, but they'll call it a strike to make up for the bad call and make it fair on the pitcher and hitter. 2 wrongs don't make a right though, and it's bad for the accuracy statistic. The younger umpires know about the technology and understand the strike zone a lot better. I wouldn't be surprised if Hoberg and Ballou were going back to look at their performance after the game to see how accurate they were. I would be really surprised if you told me Las Diaz or Angel Hernandez was going back to look at the tape after the game. The old school guys just aren't going to do that. So what is Major League Baseball waiting for? Get the old guys out and get some of the younger, new guys in. Well, the problem is that umpires have a pretty good union, and firing an umpire based on performance just isn't going to happen, and it hasn't happened at all in recent history. Brock Ballou is still a part-time umpire only because Major League Baseball has to wait for a full-time umpire to retire or step down to give Ballou a shot because the umpire union is pretty strong. So does this mean robo umps are on the way? I would hope not. I would love to not go to the automatic ball and strike system. For one, it would completely ruin the catcher position. Catchers wouldn't need to frame anymore, which accounts for nearly 90% of most catchers' defensive value. It would relegate their job to blocking balls, throwing out runners, and calling pitches, which would be kind of depressing for fans that are really into the game, but for casual fans it wouldn't mean much. Catchers would go from the most important defensive position on the diamond to just in the middle. So what can Major League Baseball do? A good start would be holding umpires to a standard. Obviously, it would be tough to negotiate with the union, but there has to be some way where they can demote umpires back to the minor leagues if they don't perform well, just like players. It's Major League Baseball after all. Billions of dollars are going into this. It's not like your backyard wiffle ball game. If you aren't calling balls and strikes at a rate that is fitting for the highest level of baseball in the world, then tough luck. I can guarantee that there are plenty of umpires that are calling balls and strikes at a better rate than Angel Hernandez, C.B. Buckner, and Las Diaz. Now, I know they would have to come up with some compromise with the union, maybe something like if they get demoted back down to the minors and they still make major league money, and after so many years they don't make it back up, then they will go to a minor league salary. Major League Baseball would have to spend more money, but I think it would be well worth it to keep the integrity of the game intact and not switch over to automatic umpires. Something like that would have to happen. I don't know too much about the business behind umpires, and there's not really a ton of information out there about it. Okay, rant over. If you take one thing away from this video, it should be Pat Hoberg, good. Robo umps, bad. There are better options. And Brock Ballou, Julio Rodriguez.